Euphantius Ano, Book 1 of the Euphantius Collection by Seth Gill. All rights reserved, Seth Gill. Read by Seth Gill. Chapter 1 Trials of Tribulations. I don't think you understand, sir. I understand fully, Devon. Sit down. Devon remained standing. He felt like he needed to argue his point more. Somehow, sitting would make that impossible. He wasn't sure why he felt so adamant he should stand. He just was. Sit down, Clive Cormac groaned louder, glaring across expectantly. Devon sat. The seat was plush leather. The office was a page out of history with its leather upholstery, faux mahogany desk, and brass lamps and fixtures. Clive Cormac even had the old brass pen and calendar stock and stacks of paper. Cycled paper, of course. Nothing real about it, but it looked authentic. I understand why you want to attend the session, Clive Cormac continued, rustling some faux paper before sitting back and rubbing the bridge of his nose. I have no doubt you also know full well why you can't attend it. I can use a false ident, Devon suggested, urged, sitting forward in his chair. Cormac rubbed his brows, groaning low, so Devon frowned and shrugged, patting his right leg. I've already set one up, he mumbled. It's very good. They'll never know it was me, and the channels are open. They're not being watched. They're always being watched, and everyone who logs into these sessions has to offer a sample. Government DNA labs, boy? How about that one? Devon frowned. Use someone else's? They know everyone up here. Cormac sat forward again, elbows on his desk and hands clasped tight. The address, no matter how well you mask our base code, will tell them you're up here. And they'll have everyone's DNA on file, so they'll know you aren't who you say you are. If you use a lab sample, they'll know that too. Whatever you do, that file alarms and sends a team up here. They'll find you, boy. Is that what you want, is it? Devon shook his head, gaze averted. If it meant he could log on and view the session of the latest cell regeneration methods, he wanted to declare that it didn't matter. But he knew better. I'll log on for you, Cormac suggested, Devon's expression brightening. I'll record it on holodisk. Devon closed his eyes. They scanned the viewers, Cormac moaned. Again, they might ask who you were if you were watching the live event when you don't actually exist. When you're not in the system, at least. He tried a smart grin. Devon returned a sour frown. If I could change things, I would, Cormac insisted. He glanced around his office's full wood paneling and reproduction art of men whose images he'd found in the lost files. But we can only hold on to so much. I don't want to see you lost to ignorance, boy. Devon sighed. He forced a nod. I'll send you the recording when it's done. Devon stood, feeling so defeated. I should get back to work. Take the long way back, Cormac suggested. The cloud server's lifted for a few hours, and there's a new comet in the neighborhood. You can likely see the Borealis if you're quick enough and the viewing ring isn't full. Devon nodded distractedly, waved a sullen goodbye, and left Clive Cormac's office. The faux everything from paper and brass to wood paneling and fuzzy carpet was gone for shiny silver and blue. The station's flooring was robin's egg blue that climbed halfway up the door. After that and across the ceiling was silver. It all had the fresh gleam to it like it was just washed and polished, which it was, of course. The station's walls were built over a biometric shell. On the outside, the station used transporter tech and magnetic waves to keep inner and outer shielding intact. Inside, thousands of microbots circulated, polishing and maintaining the pipes and conduits. They rebuilt and reconstructed before parts wore out and turned themselves on and off as required. The clean state of the corridors was an indirect effect. While maintaining the station's systems, the microbots gave off a low-level radiation that killed any dirt or dust that filtered up into the ceiling and came off shoes or hands. After a while, this all became commonplace. Devon didn't even notice the microbots and the work they did as he stepped out into that rather sterile corridor and stared left and right. He didn't really care to view Earth or the cosmos just then, but he felt like he should anyway, because his boss had suggested it. Because he didn't want to stare at work just then anyway. So he stuffed his hands in his pockets and turned right, starting off towards the main grav shaft. Techs, consecs, and legals passed. Tech split up into sub-departments, of course. Machinery, coders, information ambassadors, host contacts, and a dozen more specialized designations. Devon was a tech. His sub-department was program coding. Most techs wore the station's basic beige jumpsuit. Some, like Devon, had more leeway, hence Devon's brown slacks and comfortable jacket. Basically, techs applied computer-based function and maintenance, which on the space station meant that they kept the place running. The jumpsuits were for utility. Devon's attire fit with someone who never knelt to repair a circuit board, so he got the free space to choose his attire. Consecs served everyone else. They cleaned and stocked the kitchens and private quarters as well as loading bays and some external ports. Military ports were more strictly run, but the domestic ship docks were their terrain for the most part. Their attire was more white than anything else, and they all carried communicators and personal air masks at all times. It was standard issue. Legalts were the modern-day lawyers with their synthetic suits and tattooed arms. Their shoes always squeaked when they walked, never failed. They applied the world government law to everything that went on station side. They were a necessary evil, or so some people thought. Most of them were staring at their view pads, carrying on in their own conversation, or tapping away in some given task. A few looked at him and smiled. He tried to smile back. By the frowns he then received, it was clear his despondent mood was evident. He was just like them, and yet he wasn't. He wore the right clothes. He made the same joke, on a good day. But he was different enough. Though he could overlook that fact most days, at times like these, the truth was too much to swallow. So he started avoiding eye contact. "Devon, wait up!" Devon turned with a start, furrowing his brow. His darker mood dwindled to a simple frustration. He could never stay angry long. "What's the rush?" his friend called, slowing at his side. Devon started walking again, his friend keeping pace. "What are you doing away from your station?" "I went looking for you. When you weren't there, I got worried." "I do leave my computer terminal every once in a while, Lester," Devon groaned. His friend laughed merrily. "Not that often." Devon supposed he didn't leave it too much. "Still, I had a meeting," he mumbled. "Nothing too important," he lied. "What takes you away from your post?" "Lunch. You taking?" "Maybe later. I'm not in the mood." "But I'm buying." Devon allowed a smirk. Meals were paid for by the service. Lester was the kind of friend to make jokes that were only mildly funny, but he cracked himself up every time. Even now he was chuckling to himself and patting his knee, and it made Devon smirk a little more just watching it. "How are you doing on that new algorithm?" "It's slow," Devon rued. "The error checks aren't programmed to ignore the changes. They keep catching perfectly fine code. More than a little frustrating." "You can tell me that again," his friend grumbled along. "I'm in the middle of developing some adaptive protocols, and it slows to a stop. Does nothing. Right when I'm approaching a deadline, usually. I don't know why they can't produce the whole package at once. Why not give us the algorithms, code checks, and everything else? I usually write my own programs. They just aren't complete yet. I can send you copies when I finish them." "That would be great." Regular corridor was broken by the usual wall-mounted view screens and communication boxes. Devon stopped to turn. "Why are you up here? Cafeterias are one ring down." Lester thought a moment before shrugging. "Weekly review, of course. What else?" Devon nodded. "Right, weekly reviews." They parted at the grav shaft. Lester took his own. He stepped into the clear cylinder, lifted his arms. The grav plating activated, lifting him a foot from the floor. Then the shaft and the man were gone, dropped in a blur of motion to be replaced a second later by another. Devon stepped into his own grav shaft and requested the viewing ring, first level. The small compartment dropped quickly. Gravity gyros kept him from hitting the ceiling. His feet were only a foot from the floor at any point. There was nothing to worry about, certainly nothing out of the ordinary. Thinking of his friend hovering, arms out, pretending to fly, he smiled. His dark mood faded to an inkling of irritation. It was a lot more manageable than what he started off with. He stepped out at last into the viewing ring, where he found a quiet lounge to gaze out from. The space station had been built post-invasion. The Raphalam had burned every satellite and station out of the sky when they'd invaded. In their follow-up campaigns, they'd also burned a wide swath of Russia clean of life, and dissected South America into different degrees of flooding. There was even a wide swath of residual scarring that cut North America in two from California up across the bottom of Hudson's Bay. Nothing grew in any of those swaths. They were just thin, canyon-deep gray fixtures on a planet that had otherwise fully recovered. Even the clear-cut forests had grown back in the decades post-invasion, but not them. After the Raphalam had finally been beaten back and chased off, humanity had started to build new and better machines with the technology they'd left behind. The space race had been recommitted anew with added vigor. This station, Callistenae, had been the first major build since the new hybrid tech. It had the old conical style of the old days, its bottom sections larger than its top. He supposed it resembled a giant egg in that sense. Its separate rings spun to create artificial gravity like those more traditional designs. Not that anyone felt it. The greater ring that circled the station further out was connected to one of the wider lower rings. That greater ring housed the vegetation and food plant. It also added improved structural integrity for the station. That part had been completely alien. Standing in that lounge at the station bottom with the earth played out below him, Devon picked out the borealis lights circling the northern pole. With the earth a bright blue-green marble against the starry black of space, he picked out 7 new satellites in orbit. There was no comet in sight, but he forgave that quickly enough. He found himself staring at the northern hemisphere. He imagined he could pick out Alberta from that landmass down there. Jasper would be about halfway up. That gave him a smile, albeit for a moment. There had been good times growing up in that small house with the door that never closed and the heater that rattled, and the neighbors that constantly fought over the dumbest of things, and his mother who'd sang to him every night as he'd fallen off to sleep. He wiped a tear away. Cornac was good to him. He owed the man a lot. His life even. But he missed home sometimes. Things had been simpler then, before he'd known that he wasn't like everyone else. before he'd had to fear what they'd do to him if they found out, before all that time in between when things had gotten really bad and he'd needed rescuing. It wasn't the fact that he couldn't log into the session he wanted to watch. Cornac was taking a risk just logging in and recording a session for him. They'd asked why someone in management was logging in and listening to a topic that was above his concept level. It would raise flags no matter how good the man was at spinning a yarn. It wasn't any one thing that was upsetting Devon, really. It was years of everything. The simple past lost to time, the limitations he lived, the constant reminders of who and what he was, all things he had no control over. Sometimes, like now, he'd give up anything to be normal. Devon wasn't sure how long he stood there wondering what people were doing down on Earth. The population counts were near suffocating again. The cities were near to busting. He assumed it was loud and claustrophobic for them, but normal. A soft hum came across to him. Period change. Depending on what period cycle you were running, the sound was a cue to switch over to the next activity, be it sleep, work, or eating. Maybe you had a specialized activity schedule, which was known to happen. Devon closed his eyes. It was his sleep period. He'd missed the entire rest of his work module. I'll hear about that when he groaned. He started back along the viewing ring to the grav shaft. This time he announced D-ring, and his body lifted. He was shot up 3 rings, stepping out amid a noisy bustle. Everyone was always bustling about on D-ring. Some were milling about in small groups and comparing view screen data or current news. There were clear and distinct splits between jumpsuits and white garb and synthetic suits. The techs, consecs, and legals didn't really mix. There were pockets of more casual attire, of course. Devon's department, they mixed a little. They worked with all 3 other departments after all, but even that was limited. Devon held his palm to the station's food dispenser on the wall and requested a quick meal. It dropped down in its sealed container, and he carried it with him along the life hatches. D-ring was built with its usual corridor of silver and blue. Life hatches were assigned to each person on station. They weren't large, but there was a bed, computer terminal, and bathroom facilities in each. Space was limited on station. Those life hatches were mounted towards the inner core with the cafeterias on the outside. That way people could look out the windows into space as they ate. Devon found his life hatch series and stepped onto the left mechanism. He was lifted up 7 hatches to his own. At the press of his hand against this reader, the hatch covering opened in, and he climbed inside, the hatch closing behind him. His meal was dropped on a tabletop that extended on his request. He turned the computer terminal on as he passed, its screen flickering to life across from the tabletop. While the server booted up and connected with his workstation, he stripped out of his slacks and top and into his sleep jumper, plain gray. He could use his credits on something more interesting, but he always opted for new music from the old Earth archives. He had quite a collection going. Music, he announced, a soft gong confirming the command had been accepted. Soft jazz, late 30-10 era, random. The music started playing its soothing beat, and he smiled. Sinking into the terminal seating molded for his body, he felt relaxation creep over him. All remaining irritation and frustration tended to melt at times like this. This was his domain. There wasn't anything he couldn't do behind a keyboard and a coding wall. He accessed his current open files and comlink channels. There were a dozen messages, but they could be dealt with when he was back up top again. He considered the meal selection they'd given him with a contented nod. Burger, potatoes, and mass. His favorites. It was all reconstituted food, of course. Nothing natural. But the flavors were pretty accurate to the real thing from what he'd been told. Flavors were even built up to offer a more stimulating effect. Who needed real anymore? And it was all good for the body. The shape was more traditional than anything else. Devon opened up his food container and took a whiff. He smiled further. Station life was too sterile. Flavors were great for the mind and body, but he missed smells the most from growing up Earthside. Deodorizers and sanitizers kept things too neutral. Even now, antibiotic and cleansing gases seeped in through lower grates. He shrugged, deciding to enjoy each experience while he could. Before he could get too far into his meal and work, a familiar orange circle popped up on his desktop, just below his browser history list. It started to vibrate and sound off, and he tapped on it. The touchscreen controls responded, and his coding window of blue on white was now shared with the vid window. Kaylee's Pilan's smiling face beamed across with the usual gray-beige cubicle background with cluttered bins and paper trays. Her ceramic mug had clearly spilled, damp cloth bunched up nearby. A few light pens rolled free on that busy desktop beside an open food container. Devon didn't recognize her meal. It was something green and yellow. Kaylee's red hair had been tied back behind her shoulders, those green eyes brilliant against all those dimmer cubicle color tones. They were implants, of course, but what did that matter? "There you are," she announced with a grin. "I've been trying to link up for near an hour." Devon blushed. "Sorry, had a meeting. Nothing too much, just missed some work time. Making it up now." "When you should be sleeping," she surmised. She was looking around like she was inspecting Devon's life hatch from what her vid window would show her. "Well, yeah, I guess." He felt his blush increase. He took another bite of his burger and swallowed it down, clearing his throat. "And eating," he added, holding up his container. "Like you, I see." It was her turn to blush, hot red like her hair. I abandoned that hours ago, she groaned. It's all cold now, and these things can't be reheated. Not if you want them to taste any good. Yeah, I hear that. How's that one subroutine going? She typed something on her end. The air control for the redundant backup. They keep hassling me for an update down here. I got the relay protocols running, Devon mumbled, but once they update the air and comms channels, I'll need a new build or two. The workload will just be too much as is. That's expected. Kaylee's checked another window, tapping away, chewing on her lower lip. Send me what you've got. I'll swap you for some updated gravimetric readings. Devon transferred the file into his outbox. The connection was near instantaneous. He received the file back and returned just as quickly. It was opened in his plain white window, orange and red words mixed with blue. Devon glanced at coding over a moment before nodding, then frowning. Can I get the whole program? Khalees frowned back where she took a quick drink. Afraid not. All I ever see anymore are references to security protocols. The subfolders have already been uploaded to your servers up there. It'll run when you apply the code. No worry there. Devon sighed. I like your work, Khalees mused, nodding. This is awesome. I'll send it along. How you doing up there anyway? I know you're not sleeping well. Devon had to chuckle. I'm a little lonely at times. I could still use that visit you keep promising. They canceled my vacation time again. Someone passed through her cubicle. The woman was saying something he couldn't hear. Kayleigh nodded, her cheerful expression replaced by a more serious frown. She said something back. I need to go, she announced, disappointed, guarded. I'll be back online tomorrow. The window went black. She was offline just like that. I'll be here. He nodded and logged off, and he stared at that blank window a moment longer before closing it. She was his live contact with normal, his escape from the trappings of life. And she was good-looking, funny, and had an amazing smile. There were usually pleasantries and jokes, a lot of smiles. He wondered what she'd been told before logging out. He tapped the hollow projector to the right of his computer, and a blue globe sprung to life above it. The planetoid hologram rotated on its axis, slow and majestic. Euphantius Ano, he mumbled with a grin. What this is all about. A new home without fear, without the past dogging my heels. A sigh. With any luck, he added with a shrug, if she doesn't miss the assignment, with her too. It was a chance at a new, comfortable life. It was worth all the disappointment. It was what kept him working steadily while others like his friend Lester took shortcuts. It was his reason and rhyme. A stifled yawn. Even dedicated as he was, even he had limits. I'll finish this tomorrow. It can wait. He saved the files and closed his computer down, yawning more fully. His meal was quickly finished. With the table slid away again, he curled up under covers and slipped off into dreamland.